Hi. Um, those of you who don't know me, my name is Sheena, and I am Madam Facilitator, creator of the People's Pride Project. And we want to welcome you to our very first couch conversation. Now, what is a couch conversation and why do we need to give a shit? Couch conversations are casually intellectual conversations for people. And what I mean by that is, I got tired of having to live up to or be forced into this Eurocentric ideal of what's proper, what's correct, going through gatekeepers and blah, 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 for us to get the information that we need. And I know a lot, but I don't know everything, obviously. But I have friends that know a lot. So I figured it only makes sense to bring my friends to sit down with us and talk about some things that we need to know, such as, you know, why we need to do for ourselves, what have been the things that have held us back thus far, what do we need to do, and what can we do right now to get some momentum moving and to move forward. So today, on our very first couch conversation, we're on the couch, we're conversating. The word is conversing, I know. And to finish out Black History Month, I thought it was only appropriate to have my friend, Dr. Kevin Thompson, professor at the University of Houston in Texas, professor of African American Studies and Urban Education, sit down, crash the couch, and have a little conversation with us. So let's see if we can get him on. Kevin. Hey,
Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
how are you? I'm good.
Well,
How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. A little breezy, but I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry
good.
for sorry if I'm loud as shit in your headphones,
No, it's all good.
I talk a lot.
It's all good. It's all good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Really, really well.
That's good.
Yeah. So I gave you a little brief intro, I don't know if you heard it or not.
I did. I did. I did.
But is there anything I left out that you want people to know?
Uh, nah. I mean, you pretty much covered it. I'm a man of the people, so my words speak for me. So there it
Okay.
is.
All
Yeah.
right. Now, with you being in Houston and everything that's going on in Texas, I feel like it serendipitously is the
Hmm.
right time to kind of have this conversation about doing for self and
Hmm.
why it's important. Are there things that maybe you felt like um had you been better prepared or had your community better been prepared, it would have affected things differently with everything going on with the weather down there?
Honestly, no. Simply because we're not at the point that we could like create our own electrical infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Texas is unique in the fact that it runs on its own grid, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have one side of the United States that's on one grid, and you have the other side that's on another grid, and then you have Texas as opposed, save a few counties that's basically running on its own grid. I mean, it was deregulated. There was no government involvement, and basically they took that as an opportunity to make money, right? So the reason why nobody was prepared because it doesn't get that cold down here.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, I mean, it gets cold, but we broke some records. And the construction of the homes, the water lines are not buried deep underground, nor are they under the homes. They're actually right outside of your house and up the walls or um,
Mm-hmm.
in your signals or what have you. You have dual story homes, and a lot of people didn't really know how to survive in cold temps, right? So besides the electrical issues, you had people who didn't know that you couldn't grill in the house.
Right.
So they're trying to grill in the house and they were dying from carbon monoxide poisoning. They didn't know that you couldn't just sit in your car in the garage, even though the door is open with the car running, that you will still get sick from carbon monoxide poisoning. So there was a lot of things that people who have not stayed in a cold climate did that me, not necessarily coming from a cold climate, but having experienced some cold temperatures, I knew better,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think as far as preparation goes, just some tips and some tricks.
Right.
Yeah, some tips and some tricks, to kind of share that. But besides preparation, unless we had our own, generation on nuclear plant, it really was nothing that we could do, really.
That's understandable. That's
Yeah,
understandable. I feel like as people, especially as Black people, we've been kind of lulled into this false security.
right,
So the tips and tricks that would have helped, I mean, our grandparents knew them,
right,
like that's how they
right,
survived. So I
right.
think it's kind of important for us to get back into having those things just in our back pocket,
Hmm.
it for should things like this arise. You know what
Right,
I mean?
right, right. And that's what I mean. Even with that, as far as preparation goes, not a lot of us know how to. I just saw your post earlier, how to grow things from seed, or how to use food scraps and to start maybe a backyard garden or something like that, or
Mm-hmm.
how to properly store rainwater. If
Mm-hmm.
it's, but first you have to find out if it's legal in your state.
Yeah.
And then, how to purify that water, distill it so you can use it, how to sew, how to make
Mm-hmm.
medicine and tinctures
Mm-hmm.
and balms or salves if you need them. There are a lot of things that I had the good fortune of learning from my grandparents and my parents that a lot of people are not really privy to. I had a friend whose mom had a cough and was kind of deep, kind of chest cold like,
Mm-hmm.
and I made pine needle tea on the spot.
Look at you.
Yeah, and she didn't know anything about it. I mean, you have pine needle tea, and this one is nasty, cow chip tea, all cooked tea and things like that. That I heard of, because
Mm-hmm.
I was the one that they always told these stories to.
Mm-hmm.
And I made it, in like 30 minutes, she was good to go. So it's just a lot of things. I think it's innate. I think deep down inside it is in us, but finding out how to pull it out is the problem.
That's what the program is about.
That's right. That's right.
So it's great that you bring that up because you basically had like an amazing blurb as to why this program is necessary and the whole point of it. So thank you for that. Because that's exactly what this is about. And the fact that
That's
you
right.
said it's innate is so true. It's like most of us, most of our families, if not down to our generation, grew up on this.
Right.
So it's in there somewhere. We just gotta pull it out. And I like to say we have to remember
Or put in a
versus trying to
situation.
pop. Yes.
See,
Yes.
that's the thing. We live in, this life of luxury, and we're
Mm-hmm.
not put in a situation to use that, information. Now, if I were back home, I would probably be a lot more, well, I would be skinnier for one. And, it's not even being funny. We didn't have fast food restaurants back home. So 95% of my food was cooked,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to actually having to make a conscious effort to cook 100% of my food now.
Right.
Okay. But we cook differently. Soul food was the order of the day.
Yeah.
So finding healthy alternatives back home is a lot harder than it is finding it here in Texas, right? I was cutting my own grass, and it wasn't just like a tenth of an acre. I would use a push mower to cut 2.5 acres, and that was just around the house. We had 40 acres in total. So, you're out in the sun, you're moving
Mm-hmm.
around, you're doing things. I gained almost 100 pounds when I moved here.
Oh wow.
So, it pays to be active. It pays to be in an environment in which you're actually out in the sun, you're getting some good food, and you're working. Work is
Mm-hmm.
healthy. Yeah.
Well, quiet as it's kept for all the things that I do know how to do, mowing the lawn is not my cup of tea. I'm like, it's like a vacuum for grass, right? Like
Yes and no.
yes.
I mean, it depends on what you're cutting it with, you know?
Right, but that's where my mind's like, I can make the tinctures, I can save your life, but you ask me to mow my grass, I'm like, say what now? You
It's
want
a
me to do what?
problem, huh? I got you. I got you. We'll
I,
take care of that back home.
hey, I need friends. Like, but I did like that you brought up the idea of collecting rainwater being illegal, which it is in some places, which boggles my mind. Yes and no.
Right,
And that goes to this thing that we've spoken about before, as far as being able to do for yourself being something revolutionary,
right,
because the system that we live in confines us or makes it difficult for us to do basic things to take care of ourselves. Like, it makes us dependent
right,
on their system.
right. But it's all by design. You know, it's
Yes,
all by design. Just like you said, like, why would collecting rainwater be illegal when it's something that you cannot control? And if you had a bucket out that's standing upright, wouldn't it collect rainwater anyway?
absolutely.
So would I be fine for having buckets out there just standing up and not turned over? Then
It's
how would you know? Like, would you police everybody? Would you go by everybody's house and say, hey, you got a bucket, it's collecting water, you're going to jail, right? But I think they get mad at people who are like, who showcase ingenuity, or
mhm,
actually have the system set up. You know, you have the filtration system and have it to where it's going inside the home and things like that. I think they get mad with that because they can't tax it.
right.
How can you tax the earth? Well, they do. Now, how can you even like come up with property lines? They have tax something that you didn't create, and I think that's what the problem is that okay, we can't tax this rainwater. A, we can't determine when it's going to come. Well, but that's another conversation, you know.
Right.
Um, but like it lessens your dependency on the system, and
Mhm.
whenever you lessen your dependency on the system always gets mad.
That is correct.
The system gets mad, yeah, and it acts out in taxation, jail, and sometimes the extreme order of death. You know,
That part.
yeah,
There's been a history of death and violence and retribution whenever we try to do for
yeah,
ourselves.
yeah. It
So,
is.
would you like to delve a little into that, or?
You know, here within North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean,
Mhm.
the black body has never been the property of the black body's owner,
Say it.
right? You know, so whenever the chattel, the property, quote unquote,
Hmm.
has the audacity to walk in autonomy, that again, that's problematic to the dominant class, right? So
Hmm.
you mean to tell me that you actually have a mind and a brain? So they automatically assume that with the same avarice and the same maliciousness that we're going to do to them what they did to us. In some cases, yeah, quite possibly. I mean, because you earned it. You know, you actually earned whatever's going to come to you.
Hmm.
But I think that's constantly playing in the back of their mind. So whenever we decide to galvanize, crystallize our vision, or organize, they find it real, real funny, but they get real, real scared. So now we have to squelch that whole thing, right? We have to go ahead and squash it before it gets too out of hand. Because I don't know if you've seen the movie Ants, like toward the
Yes.
end when they fight, when he was talking about, okay, it's like one or two of them, but see
Hmm.
how many of us it is, we're all united and connected, and collectively went after it. Yes, some of us may fall, but collectively we'll win.
Right.
So we've fallen for the dream of capitalism, this individualistic capitalism, you know, and
Hmm.
that keeps us separate. I got this, I have this, I got this, I have that, and I don't need you to keep it or to grow even more. And that's the biggest fallacy that we've fallen for, and that's why we're in the place that we're in right now. But that's my opinion, my observations.
You see, I ain't say nothing because you dead on. I'm not. I'm. Just gonna let you talk.
Yeah, yeah, so that's I mean, and then even our history and our culture, everything was done in a collective manner. I mean, from dancing
Mm,
to farming to any type of tradition or religious or spiritual practice, everything was done as a collective.
hmm.
Even like the rites of passage, the male rites of passage and the female rites of passage and things like that. It was always done in a group. So when we were brought over here, we were taught that, you weren't rewarded for your for your collective efforts, right? Who was going to be the best? So you create this internal competition
Hmm.
there, and then thereby you create this division because me working with you may slow me down, right? So if I'm a good boy or a good girl, then I'm in master's graces, and then all is well with me, and all is well with mine. Well, if you're left behind, naturally, my natural inclination is to reach back and help. But I know if I reach back and help, then I got to feel the master's will.
You talking that Willie Lynch on him?
Uh, you know, just a little bit,
Just a
just a
little
little,
bit.
just a little bit.
Pit
And
them against each
they,
other. See what
they
happens.
say it's not real.
Hmm. It might not be real, but the mindset was real. The actions are real. The
Yeah,
repercussions are real. The PTSD is real.
the practical application of the principles are real.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
See, that's why they don't like smart people talking to smart people.
Right. I mean, right. I mean, just think about it. Right. Just think about, let's take Nat Turner for instance,
Mm,
right? Who was used as, the slave preacher to go ahead and spread the gospel of obeying your master and doing whatever he says. This pseudo version of Christianity,
mm.
right? One that favors the oppressor over the oppressed. But they don't teach you because they didn't know themselves that the earliest progenitors of the Christian faith were African.
Yes, sir.
You have these early church fathers like Origen and um, Augustus, and I could go on and on and on. They were born in North Africa. Like they taught us how to interpret the Bible. I think Origen was the one who actually translated the Bible into 5 or 6 languages and introduced the whole concept of systematic theology.
How about even taking it to the simple fact that the Bible takes place in Africa, but they play it as if that's not where they're at all?
I think who was it? It was Kant or Nietzsche said that Africa has no history save Egypt alone. So just think about this. Egypt is on the continent of Africa, right? Yet it is viewed as separate from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where does it go? I mean, because it's Africa, then you have whatever they call the Middle East, which is basically Asia, right there. So it's there. I mean, it's not in the water, so it's not an island, it's not an archipelago, or whatever you say the word. It's not. It's there,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think the ability of it, I think they call that part the lower Nile, right? Of Asians to come in and kind of infiltrate, and by that time they kind of just really mess up the bloodline, so that we got the people there.
Right.
It's the ones in the Kush Valley and those who are a little darker than we have those right now, because the earlier Egyptians, were a little darker than me. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you
They're
know,
in South Sudan.
right. So,
Sub-Saharan Africa, I'm sorry.
right. That's right. That's right. So, you get to that point where we got them, but we can't get everybody else. So this is ours. This is our turf. It's almost like, the whole gang situation. Like you're gonna go to a spot that's not yours, but you're gonna claim it as your turf. I mean, it's basically what I mean. They really can't get mad at gangs. We just really took our cues from the Europeans.
Yes.
Yeah, we took our
So
cues from
fast forward to, I guess, Black American history,
it. Yeah,
whatever you want to call it. The conscious effort to not just negate the root of who we are, as far as like you were talking about, we work in community.
Right.
This is how we move forward. So yes, we've abolished that aspect of our culture, although they tell us we have no culture, although our culture is what makes America. But that's a
Right.
whole other conversation.
Right. Right.
Um, in trying to take away what we know works, how can we best approach that, given what, I guess I don't want to say given the scraps that we're given,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just saying we have a historic, you can trace it back step by step, generation by generation, decade by decade, the absolute terror of the colonizer
Mm-hmm.
that they then inflict to make sure that we can't go back to where we came from, not as
Right.
far as place, but as far as our,
Culture, spirit,
yes,
things
and the
like
way
yeah,
we know how to
yeah,
move forward. That's what I'm getting
yeah,
at.
yeah.
How do we now, because I mean, you have the uprisings of the 60s, you have all of these different, like, I'm 20 minutes from Newark. It's still not where it used to be. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So, how do we use that as fuel now, given what we know, given what has happened, and move forward? Like, everybody's like, oh, buy some land and do this and do that. And they're still not quite talking community. They're
Right.
still not talking, what can we do right now? Like, the people working at Walmart, they don't have money stored to buy land.
Right. Right. Right.
What can we do now?
I think the first thing that anyone should do is to learn about who we are, who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, just pick up a book and read about the people that your ancestors descended from. Okay. Go ahead and dispel the notion that everybody descended from kings and queens, because not everybody who was brought over here was a king or a queen.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no knock and no shade. That's just fact.
Right.
But learn about the history and the culture from the places that we were taken from. I don't recall too many Egyptians being brought over to America, but West Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you want to study the Akan, the Ashanti, the Mandinka, some of the cultures over there, some of those
Mm-hmm.
countries, the Nigeria, the Ghana, the Togo, Benin, Angola, the Congo, those areas over there, right? Just learn,
Mm-hmm.
just learn, but not just the history, but also learn about the culture,
Mm-hmm.
learn about the indigenous religions, learn about the tribal customs, um, tribal holidays. Just kind of familiarize yourself with something that was not taught to you in the American classroom first. Then after you do that, the light should come on, and whatever spirit is left within you will connect with other like-minded spirits to start on this journey towards collective, journey toward community. Then you'll actually be inclined to ask questions that pertain to your plight. See, it's hard to tell a people that they need to do something when they really don't know what they're doing it for. And it's hard for you to know what you're doing something for if you don't even know the type of question to ask.
Right.
So we don't even know what to ask for now. We can ask for 40 acres and a mule now, but if you get it, what are you going to do with it? What's the plan?
Right. And
Right?
that's when it goes to, oh, I'll just pay somebody else to take care of it.
That's right. And then what happens is that you end up in the same predicament that you started out in.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean to be self-sufficient? What does it mean to be self-taught? What does it mean to control your own education? What does it mean to, as the elders will call, nation build? Right? Because we're actually taking a nation within a nation
Mm-hmm.
and building it up. Well, how are you going to do that without ruffling some feathers? Are you going to do it overtly? Are you going to do it covertly? Like, how are you going to do all of this without some sort of repercussion? So, understanding that if we don't have the resources, say, you know what, forget it, we're going to up and move back, because even if you move back, you may not be accepted. Then let's just keep it real. You may and you may not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even if you go back, where are you going to go? You can't. You don't even know where to go. You don't know where your family came from. Okay, so you have to deal with what you have right now. Okay, so how can I make my community better? Okay, let's do this. Let's make it cool for black folk to stay around other black folk,
And not just for a party.
and not just for a party. Okay, so when we stand in this space, then what do we do with this space? As opposed to everybody having a back patio, let's go back to the African tradition of having a porch, so the elders can sit out, look at the kids play. Because what happened? What really the purpose of the porch was for observation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Security. So if somebody strange came up, they could report back to maybe, the man or whoever working in the back. Hey, it don't look right up here. You may need to come out here, with your hog leg or your rifle. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
Um, so let's go back to that. So okay, now you're talking about questions. I'm talking about culture. Okay, then you need to also tap into the spirituality. And I'm not saying that you have to practice any of that, but you just need to know the other side of the story. You need to look at the
Mm-hmm.
other side, the other notes, because what you're told here in America, that everything that we practice was, animalistic, was bad, was evil. No, we had our own system. So if you're telling me that if I never heard anything about Jesus Christ, I'm automatically damned to hell because I practiced something else in a place that you couldn't get to tell me about. So, so once you kind of get that ball rolling, then you'll progress toward, okay, we need our own electrical grid, and here's how we're going to generate it.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to sending all our engineers over here. Yes, we may send them over here for 20 years. When they come back, they got to come back and build something for the people. Okay, who's going to go and negotiate with the government that, hey, we need this particular parcel of land here. We need these states. We need this, that. We need statesmen. We need tradesmen. We need doctors, lawyers. See, this is not a 5-year fix.
Right.
We're planning really 300 and 400 years ahead because we won't be alive to see it. So it starts with education, then it goes towards investigation, piquing that particular curiosity, and then joining with like-minded individuals in order to even get you to that point, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of hard to like crystallize and say, here are some action steps. Well, we can line out action steps all day, right? But if you don't have the mentality to take what you're actually, whatever we
Mm-hmm.
set out to do, you won't implement it because, as an African American studies, we always talk about the ethos, the
Mm-hmm.
spirit. If you're not going to operate within the right spirit of a matter, it's not going to come to fruition.
You're right. I mean,
Yeah.
I see a lot of people that are now preaching secure in the bag, but they're
Yeah.
like, oh, it's for me and mine. It's for me and my family. Fuck the rest of y'all.
Right.
And I feel like while it's great to have your family set up, it's counterintuitive and counterproductive to what really needs to happen. That's why the
Right.
whole, the project is about authenticity, autonomy, and
Right.
community. Like there has to be that community anchor that even while you're working to build up yourself and your family, your legacy, you need to be able to understand that you have to work as working for self, it has
Collectively.
to funnel into the community.
That's
And the
right.
community has to funnel back into self, or it
Right.
doesn't work.
Right.
Like we were talking about capitalism from the very beginning, and this is the idea that the brainwashing of it all, that as long as I'm good, the rest of y'all can sink for all I care.
Right. Right.
And we'll never move, especially we're coming you can't run a relay from behind if you don't have the rest of your team with you.
Right.
You always put the anchor at the end. That's how it works. So if you're always running and not caring about the rest of your team, you're going to lose.
Right.
And I don't know quite how to get this, to get us to remember this understanding, because
You
that to
don't.
me is the key. Like, you
You
can't
don't.
do it by yourself.
You don't even try to convince people. We're not in the job of convincing anybody. That you will waste all your time trying to convince people that this is what you're supposed to do. When the spirit connects, the people who are needed and necessary within that space will join together.
You're very right.
We can't, I mean, I'd rather have 5 down people than 5 million people who are unsure.
Mm-hmm.
Because we'll do more with that five that could take over that 5 million. Because the other, if it was an inverse, that 5 million, somebody's gonna fold.
You're right.
You know what I mean? So who you
Mm-hmm.
need to connect with, that's who you will connect with. And I get that from my mentor, who's from Jersey City, who recently passed in
Oh.
January. Yeah, and that was his thing, was that it's not our job to convince anybody. When it's their time, they'll figure that out. But what our responsibility is to train and educate ourselves and to glean from those who are willing and to work with those who are willing and to move forward.
As an educator, specifically, um, with a doctorate in education, Mr. Fancy Pants, what do you see in our education system? Not
Mhm.
just as far as going back, and you touched on it briefly, but what do we need to change in our education system that would help the mindset? I'm like, do we need more homeschooling? Do we need to change the curriculum? What do we need to do, or what could even be the trickle down to get it started?
Right. Some strides have been made with this whole promulgation of ethnic studies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the problem comes in, you have people who are writing the curricula who are not versed in ethnic studies. So getting your face in a place, getting that seat at the table to have the conversation about this is what we need to teach. Take for example, Garrett Morgan, the
Mm-hmm.
inventor of the three-way traffic light. Okay, so as opposed to just highlighting Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Black History Month, let's talk about black people who invented stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what did they study? We need more of us in those particular areas. Like the sister, I think her name was Marie Van Britten, if I'm correct. Well, she created, I think she's the one who created, it's either the GPS or the home security system. It was a brother who created the cell phone, right? It was a brother
Mm-hmm.
who invented potato chips. It was a sister who invented this. Okay, now we got that. So what else did black people do? Well, you're living in a White House, they use slave labor. Okay, you like to drink whiskey? Cool. Black man taught a white dude how to char and make whiskey. That's,
Mm-hmm.
if y'all ever heard, Uncle
Uncle
Nearest,
Nearest, yep.
right? Right. Well, what's so cold is that my great grandfather used to char his own whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather made his own persimmon beer. My grandmother made her own muscadine wine.
You know.
I can't make none of that stuff, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's in there. Like my dad would say, it's prego. It's in there. You just have to find out how to get it out, right? So, um, reworking the curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't have American history without Black history. You don't. Why? Because we've been here since the jump. Okay, cool. Yeah, the nation was founded in 1776. Right. The first 20 were brought to Port Comfort, Virginia in
1619.
1619. Now, that's just North America. But Africans were already here a couple of hundred years earlier in Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
Central America, and the Caribbean. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We often negate the whole Caribbean and the South and the Central American brothers and sisters as well. So, teaching that, as opposed to just using this social studies book in which you got 20 and 30 scholars to come together and talk about what they thought or think is important. Let's start with something like Ivan Van Sertima's, that came before Columbus, or Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of Black Civilization,
Mm-hmm.
or, something by the teacher, the master teacher, John Henry Clark, or something about
Mm-hmm.
Shake Out the Diop. Let's talk about white skin, black man's reference,
Mm-hmm.
Malone, but we can't go that deep in school. because I'm sure some of those regions will go on the banned list. But my job as an educator is not to tell you what to think. It's to
Right.
show you where to think.
I like that.
you know, and even the word education, when you break it down in Latin, as you said it, means to lead. It is my job to lead you to a point or to a place of thinking. And once I lead you there, leave you alone. Seriously, and let you make, because you're not smart if you can't create an independent thought. And if I tell you everything that you need to think, then what have you learned? You've learned to regurgitate.
I
Right.
like
That's where critical thinking comes into play.
I like
Now, I could use the Socratic method and to ask you a question to kind of get you to, you know, think in a particular area to show you a potential flaw in your thinking. But I need to just get you there. And what the American educational system has done is they refuse to get people to think in other areas besides ones that are within this Eurocentric umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Yeah, we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about the founding fathers, but okay, what dirt, were the founding fathers doing? I mean, the first 15 to 20 were slave owners.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about the first 150 years of this great nation, understanding that slavery was okay. The subjection of a people, okay, okay. It's a slave, we need more representation. Where they count as three-fifths of the person, really? So I'm only 60% of a person.
And all of that was only brought into play as political moves to keep the
Hmm.
North from being overrun by the South. Because if you
That's
counted
right.
slaves as full people and going by population, the South would be able to make all of the decisions for the
That's right.
country.
That's
None of
right.
these were actual moves that were done with care or thought to say that these are human beings that have autonomous thoughts and should be
Right.
looked at as people.
Right.
Like, even everybody goes, oh, Lincoln freed the slaves. No, Lincoln was trying to crush the Confederacy.
That's right.
Lincoln
That's
did
right.
not care about slaves.
No, but people don't. But again, it's all about spinning the narrative. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're controlling the education of a people, you can spin that any way you want. And not only do they have black people fooled, they got white people fooled as well. Yeah, he freed the
Yes.
slave. No, he did not. He was trying to win.
By
Because what was
any
happening in the
means
South?
necessary.
Right. A lot of those in the Confederacy were taking their slave porters or what have you to the field with them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get hurt, you better take my rifle, you better shoot back. So that is it's way deep in the rap here. You got to really understand what was happening. And I watched. What was I watching? Actually, I was watching. Will Smith has a docu series on Netflix
I
called The
think I
Men.
saw. Mm-hmm.
I saw the first episode. We was talking about the 14th Amendment, right?
That's wasn't that some that's some rewording. Listen,
Yeah, yeah,
slavery is
yeah.
illegal unless you're convicted of a crime, and
No,
then you can be a
no,
slave forever.
no, that's the 13th. The 14th is talking about citizenship.
Mm.
Now,
Okay.
who do you consider to be a citizen? Right. Well, great. Okay. Now everybody can be citizens, right? White, black,
Mm-hmm.
and different, cool. But now you start coming up with black codes,
Right.
vagrancy laws, convict leasing, and things like that, which is nothing more than slavery by another name. That's an actual book. I can't
Mm-hmm.
remember the brother's name, Douglas something, but slavery by another name. Okay, cool. So now, you fresh out the plantation. You don't have anywhere to go.
Right.
So either you choose to go back to the plantation, or you're standing on the corner, you're looking for work, and they arrest you and they put you in something worse than the plantation,
Mm-hmm.
and then rent you out. Now we are well, yeah. I'll venture to say this: we are the only people who have graced the land in North America who, at not one time, had full autonomy of our bodies. Now, the reason I say that is that the American Indians were here. But they were here thousands of years before when they made the trek over from Asia over to here. And
Mm-hmm.
they had a little bit of time before Europeans
Okay.
came over and did their thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Africans were brought over here specifically for the purpose of work. Specifically, this is what you're going to do. So
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like, okay, I'm going to bring this dog over here to pull my sled. How dare this dog want to drive his own sled. And I hate to, to really, break it down like that, but that's really how they look at us sometimes. And you notice and I think it was Ta-Nehisi Coates who was talking about this example in his book. You go into a store, right? You got your
Mm-hmm.
kids with you, small white mother, black mother. White kid can run all over this store. She's
Right.
not worrying about anybody snatching him up. He can go break up a family discussion. It don't matter. Little Tommy got free reign to do whatever. But a black mother is almost like a mother hen. She wants the kids around her at
Mm-hmm.
all times because she's afraid if the baby gets loose, somebody may say something. We can't get too loud. You can't get too handsy. You can't mess with too many things on somebody's desk. You need to sit down, be quiet, and be still until we get out of here. We would go in this store, don't ask for nothing, don't reach for nothing, don't touch nothing, don't say nothing. We're going to get in, we're going to get out. That's almost like being in prison. I got to teach you how to operate within society. So you're teaching one kid that you can be footloose and fancy free and do whatever you want. The word is your turf. And you're teaching another one, listen, you are not your own. These folks will hurt you in here.
Right.
You know?
I mean, as quiet as it's kept, even as adults, a lot of us still hold because that's our home training. That's our
Mm-hmm.
manners. It's
Mm-hmm.
not how to be good to each other. It's how to exist with these invisible color lines. Like even now, you can see two adults walking down the street. Who moves first? Who feels entitled to space on the sidewalk
Right.
versus somebody that's immediately going to shrink
Yeah.
themselves?
Okay,
It's
excuse me. Oh, my bad. I'm in the way. Yeah,
mm-hmm,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Meanwhile, you got your
Like,
Starbucks and your poodle walking
right.
down the street
Like,
with no problem, like they
why
own the
can't I
street.
own my space? Like, why can't I
Mm-hmm.
own my space? I'm a big
Right.
dude. Why do I feel like the need to make myself small, right, to make you feel comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
When we were in stores, I could be shopping for my family, and and there's always a little white lady, um, who felt the need or always felt comfortable asking me to get something for them off the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're so big and strong. Can you get that for me? I know exactly what that is. It's cold. Now I may do it because I'm nice.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to retort, "Well, I don't work here," there would be something wrong with me
Right.
because I had the audacity to take up for myself. Or I would be viewed in a particular way. So now you have this dissonance within yourself. Okay, well, should I help? Or should I tell her to go somewhere and kick rocks?
Now,
Okay,
do you think that internal conflict is just a black thing, or do you think that's a human thing?
I'll say it is a human thing, but it's unique to the black experience here in America.
I can rock with that.
Yeah, it's unique to us. We're used to it. We're being treated like the help.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if you're 7 foot tall and I can get something, I mean, hey, partner, can you help me out?
Right.
But 9 times out of 10, what do you see? If we can't get anybody from the store and we have to ask somebody, it's like I have no other option, but I need this for my family.
Right.
Because I've seen sisters climb shelves to avoid asking people for help,
I'm not
right?
short, and I've done it.
Right? But you can have somebody who may be your height. Oh, can you get that for me? Because they don't feel like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You have long arms. Can you get that? What are you trying to say? Yeah, I know they're long, but they're long for whatever
They're
purpose
mine.
they are. Right. And it's
They're
not
long for
designed
me.
just right to get this last jar of jelly that you want.
Definitely understood.
Yeah.
Do you feel, how do I want to say this? Do you feel this is more of an outside job or an inside job?
I think self-perception is an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think to actually to progress and to really connect and to really build, just looking at the sheer numbers alone, you need some outside help.
True.
I mean, you just can't do it by yourself.
Right.
And there are some places that we can't get to that others can.
Mm-hmm.
But we're always leery of that relationship because somebody generally oversteps their bounds, or they can't connect with, again, going back to this whole term ethos about what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's almost like you have to, what was the movie, The Banker?
I didn't see
Like,
that.
have you seen The Banker yet with Samuel L.
Mm-mm.
Jackson, Anthony Mackie? So,
No.
you know, two brothers own one of the largest banks in LA.
Mm-hmm.
So the black brother was smart with numbers and genes and formulas and things like that. He's learning while shining these people's shoes. In order for him to get into the banking industry, of course, he need capital and things like that. Well, Samuel Jackson's character was he was the money,
Mm-hmm.
right? He had all these political connections. Well, they were going to buy this big building. I'm sorry, they're not banking, but yeah, banking, real estate, whatever. Anyway, long story short, they got this white dude who was a janitor and used him as a figurehead to make deals with him when it was illegal for them to do so, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, when I tell them the story, the guy turned on him.
Of course.
Right. So I think that's always in the back of my mind when we're talking about collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
You
Allyship
know,
gets murky. It gets
it
murky.
gets murky, and
And
people get ticklish. You know,
yeah.
you want to tell it, and you know, you want to just do your own thing. It's like this is about the collective.
And not just wanting to do their own thing, but like you're saying, as far as ethos, they're operating through their own lens. So
Right.
does it become a savior complex? Do you actually understand the issues and see where the problems are and want to help correct it? Are you
Right.
trying to rid yourself of guilt? Like there's so many
Right.
other things that tend to
Going on.
play,
Right. Right.
and that's when it starts to be like, I don't know, bro.
And I don't really know. I mean, I don't. I'll put it like this: you're responsible for your own happiness, and
Mm-hmm.
I say you're responsible for knowing who you are as a person. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we're ultimately responsible for knowing who we are as a people. Now, you can't negate this whole American experience because for most of us, this is all we know.
Right.
But we also have to know that this melanin within our skin binds us to another place. Now, finding out specifically where you came from may
Mm-hmm.
be like a needle in a haystack, but if you just don't relegate yourself to finding out where you came from per se and learn about the entire continent, you know, in totality, I
Mm-hmm.
still think you'll have a greater appreciation for who you are as a person. And when you have that particular, this, it's not a word for it. You know how you have, this nationalist like view of things. You know, I'm really
Mm-hmm.
proud to be an American, or I'm proud to be Cuban, or I'm proud to be Polish, or
I've never
whatever.
felt that.
We've never felt that. We're the only people here who really didn't have. Our culture was basically built in trauma.
Mm.
We were torn from a culture. We had to lose our language, you know, our religion, so on and so forth, and create new things that were either given to us or
Mm-hmm.
ones that we formed out of pain and
Mm-hmm.
necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And I don't think people really take that into consideration. It's like for me personally, the question is yes, I live in America, born and raised here, but am I an American?
and what does that mean?
Right. Like I explain to people, my parents weren't born with the right to vote. Me and my siblings were the first generation of Black Americans. Our generation was the first born with the right to vote. I mean, you
Mm,
have after Reconstruction where Black men were given the right, but to
right,
say that a whole generation of no, this is the norm, it was
right,
us. I'm an '80s
right,
baby. Like
right,
it wasn't a long time ago.
right.
So when did we become, or have we actually become Americans, or are we still just renting a space in land that we happen to occupy?
American in name, but not in spirit. You know, because again, as we say with the killing of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Phila- Sandra, the law applies to us when we're the criminals.
Right.
It does not apply to us when we're the victim.
Right.
You know, so I don't care how they spin it. This is what
Mm-hmm.
I see, right? And they show us this daily. Now, what gets me is that while they can't say it outright, they're constantly feeding us this image that you're less than or nothing more,
Mm-hmm.
or this is what we do to those who do this,
Absolutely.
right? So if you're constantly feeding me these images, eventually I believe it. We've seen these images for centuries here.
I mean, mass hangings used as postcards. Like, there's so many things. I personally, even especially with the age of social media, I refuse to participate in trauma porn. Like,
Right,
I'm not sharing, oh, so and so got, you're not going to see that. I'm
right,
not doing it because I'm not going to keep feeding into this machine that black bodies, brown bodies, this is the only time we make headlines.
right,
This is the only time that we're viewed as not even worthwhile. Like, people spend less time showing dead animals than they do dead.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
But I refuse to participate in that because it's a real thing. Like, trauma porn is a real thing, and it's
yeah,
getting so it becomes a norm. It desensitizes
right,
society, like it's just
right,
another body. It's
right,
no big deal.
right. It's like a
So,
video game.
mm-hmm.
It'll start over after a while.
Ugh, it's too
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I had a thought, and it went the way of the wind. I'm gonna be honest. I was going somewhere with that, and it
It
was like,
happens to
nope,
us.
nope, forget
It,
about it.
it happens to us, And um, I think what America has failed to realize is that, and I say this quote often, people love mirrors, but they hate reflection.
Yes.
They hate to reflect on the fact that they did things wrong, and they've yet to apologize,
Mm-hmm.
literally, figuratively, monetarily, however. And until they make peace with that, it'll always be turmoil. But the thing is, we'll always be, well, I don't want to say it like that. That's defeatist language.
But the
But
abuser always justifies their abuse.
of course, of course, of course, of course. Yeah. So I think once we learn who we are, where we came from, and assume that spirit, until we do that, we won't really move as far as we need to. You know, you have some people who are super serious about the work, but they are so serious until they're no good. Like they know you.
Right.
Like I mean, Martin Luther King shot pool. I think you can like kick back and hang out for a little bit. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the work is not going anywhere. Um, so once we get to the point that we can, address those things, then we can really have that talk. And I really think that it would take, I heard somebody say one time during the presentation that it would take us about 25 years to even develop the questions that we need to ask,
Mm.
right? Not saying that we would be stagnant and not do anything at all, but in order for us to like create this nation within a
Mm-hmm.
nation, it would take a lot more work than initially planned.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. But some people think it's just get you some money, learn about stocks, learn about real estate, and you're
Right.
good to go.
Right.
It's not that simple. It's not that simple because I've eaten none of that stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That even if you get the bag, if you don't know what to do with it, you will fumble it
Absolutely.
and you just give it right back.
Absolutely.
You
And
know?
going back to the idea, like, oh, I got money now. I can just pay somebody to do it. But if nobody knows how to do it, because we've all chased this idea of I can
Right.
always get somebody else, where are you? And that's
I,
one thing that's very important to me with the People's
yeah.
Pride Project is the idea that I'm not saying that people got to go out and be farmers. I'm not saying that you have to have, a pantry full of your granny's recipes. Granted, those skills are 100% necessary because you never know
Right.
what could happen. but it's still, you need to have these things in your back pocket.
Right.
You can't, because just saying, okay, I have money, I can't, you're still dependent on somebody else to provide the service, even if you're paying for it.
Right. That's right.
And it's still that Booker T. Du Bois flip
Hmm.
flop. Is it more important to be the intellectual overseer or the one with the actual on the ground skills?
You
And I
need
feel
both.
like somewhere, right, we have to be somewhere in the
Right.
middle of that.
Right. And again, it's the vision. Right. It. That's the thing that they drive us on is the vision.
Mm.
Right. Okay. Well, which one is greater, being smart or swinging the hammer? You need both of them. Like you need both. Like why
Mm-hmm.
do we always have to separate who's under a particular school of thought? And then you have to also throw in Garvey within the
Okay, now.
whole book. You know, you have to throw in go
Mm-hmm.
back to Africa, and God has to look like you and things like I'm with all that, but he has some flaws too.
Right.
So everybody has flaws in their argument because they're human. Okay, so what do you need? You need all of it. You need a little bit of everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once we get to that point, I think we'll be better off.
Okay. I think I might have one more question. My brain, you see, it's
Okay.
calculating.
I see
Um,
you.
looking toward this as a movement, for lack of a better understanding,
Hmm.
and the idea of because it's counter to the culture that we're being taught to embrace, it would be considered a revolutionary movement.
Hmm.
Do we need a quote unquote messiah? Do we need a leader? Do we need a centralized figure to step up and speak for the people? Or do we need the smaller pockets of people that can do for themselves? Because even when you say Malcolm was assassinated because they said he was being bigger than the movement, like, do
Right.
we need that centralized figure, or can we just make shit shake on our own?
I think we can do that. I mean, the day of the Messiah, I think that's over with. Now that you have social media, everybody can be a leader, or fake and be a leader, but you don't have a lot of doers.
That's true.
I think we need a centralized vision.
Mm,
I think we need a centralized purpose, right? A centralized goal. And of course, you can have variations along the way, but as long as the compass points north, you're good. But as far as like having a leader, no. Now you could have leaders within certain pockets. I mean, because naturally some people will ascend to
mm-hmm.
leadership positions, and some will say, "Hey, I just want to be the worker."
Right.
So with that, yeah. But as far as like assigning somebody a leadership position, no. I think we have to work to become collective. I mean, Africa, yeah, you had the king, but you also had the queen mother, right, who
Mm-hmm.
was just as important. Then you have like the local chiefs, and so on and so forth. I think it's a collective effort. It's just not one person saying dot 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 because absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Factual.
So absolute vision of one person, then it's gonna mess up everything. Because you may like a lot of salt in your food, I may not. But we're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to eat this, and I got to deal with the salt. Well, what if I have high blood pressure?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we cook it a particular way, and you may like sugar in your grits, I may like salt. Okay, cool. We're eating grits. Okay, it's palatable. Okay, cool. Are we both getting stronger? Yeah. Okay, we're managing our health and everything. All right, cool. Move on. I don't care what you put in it. Let's just make it happen. We're trying to get strong enough, right, to go to work.
And I believe that we too often try to make it like the Black experience is monolithic,
Right.
instead of acknowledging that because it's not, we have so many more options and so many more avenues to actually explore and to achieve through.
Right. And then is it just relegated to North America? I mean, you talk about the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta look at all of it. So I
Absolutely.
think we have a lot more to consider than what we think we know.
Absolutely.
And we have a lot more intellectual work to do. I mean, we're intellectually lazy. We got a lot of more reading to do, a lot of more writing to do. We have to engage in more forums like this in which we get the opportunity to flesh out ideas, to think about, to finding out what we need to think about.
And it's not just enough to think about it. We have to do the
Have to
work.
do something about it. That's right.
Everybody's got a theory, but nobody
Right.
wants to get their hands dirty.
Right. Now, and in some cases, that's fine. You may be the person to come up with the theory. Cool. You may
Right.
not know how to implement it, but yeah, you need somebody who
Mm-hmm.
can actually take what you're thinking and put it into practice.
Right. And that all
Right.
goes back to community. That all goes back to teamwork.
That's right. Teamwork make the dream work.
Yes, sir.
You're so silly.
I, I thought I've been really good.
You have. You have. You
I
have.
could be so much worse. But yeah, because my brain is running. Like, I don't know. It's all we've been at this for an hour.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I know you have like family and stuff you need to take
Yeah.
care of.
There's always
So
another day.
yes, sir. But one thing that kind of sticks in my head, I don't know if you remember Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
I do.
One of my favorite lines, which is really weird that I remember this as a kid, but it was like, you remember when Judge Doom bought up the red line and they were like, oh my God, he's going to save it. And
Hmm.
they were like, and he was like, no, I bought it to dismantle it. That sticks with me. It's like, you have to know the rules. You have to know the processes. You have to know the game to flip it and play it your own way.
That's right. You got to know
And
the loopholes.
exactly. I hate rules, but I know them, so I know how to break them.
Right. But that's fair. And that's what I think that's what you're supposed to do with a game.
Absolutely.
Anybody who had a Nintendo or whatever kind of gaming system, back in the day you got the game, it came with the instruction manual where you would learn all the moves of the
Mm-hmm.
particular players or learn the rules of the game and then you would start to play. But you got good at it once you started playing it. Because
And
while
you
you
learn
knew
about
the
the cheat
rules,
codes.
sometimes the rules will even go out the window when you started playing it. And you're trying to play, okay, I'm gonna push the button this particular, and you had this cousin who was just, hood with it, just pushing buttons, just kicking your tail. So what do you have to do? You have to do the same thing back. So yeah, but learn. I think it's good practice to learn the rules, and like you said, then you can actually, flip them,
Yeah.
use them to your advantage. Yeah.
Well, thank you very, very much, sir.
Thank
This
you for
was
having me.
this was a good ass conversation. I'm
It
not even
was.
gonna lie.
It was. Yeah, it was cool.
First couch conversation for the People's Pride Project, and I'm glad that you was able to step in and do it because it was a good conversation. It's a lovely way to start it off, and I hope those that were able to join in got some things to think about. It's definitely going to be showing up in different places. I will
Okay.
definitely. Is there anywhere that you want people to maybe get in contact with you, or they can learn more about you, or maybe I'll just have you back again so you can get
You can
dropping
have me
knowledge on
back
more people.
again. I mean, they can follow me on social media, but it's half between family. It's not all the way professional, so I won't give out anything until I get that fixed up. But they follow me from here. That's fine. I do a little teaching every now and again. So
All
yeah,
right, I
yeah.
would definitely
Unless
love
they
to
want to
see
hit me
you
up on
come over.
LinkedIn, I can send you there. But other than that, nah,
I don't
I'm,
even use it.
um,
But I would
you get me.
definitely love to have more conversations with you on these
I
sorts of
look
things.
forward to it.
So thank
I
you
look
very
forward to it.
much.
Thank you. You have a
Well, I'm
good
gonna
night.
let you go. Go ahead and
All right.
enjoy your night.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.